CCEI's first program, Build Hartford. Tonight, he will be talking about productivity, the importance of it, how to take your productivity to the next level, and all of his experiences through it. So the floor is yours, Dave.
Okay. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining. I know a lot of you, actually. Hey, Bat. Hello. Hey, David. So I'm Dave. I always have kind of a plan. It's one of my weaknesses and strengths. It's one of the things I want to talk to you about. We talk about the topic productivity powerhouse. I have no idea what that means, but actually I kind of made it up as I go along, which is what I usually do. I do 3 things right now. I have a small company, which is a craft venture builder, which Patrick, who's on the call, helped me build. It's called Red Planet Ventures. So we're kind of a non-venture capital, but venture builder studio. I also work with David Noble and some of the other guys on the call here on various programs at UConn. And I just started 2 weeks ago working at Connecticut Innovation's part-time, doing a really cool thing. And so I was thinking about all that and preparing for today and how I could help you. And, I want to take your questions and stuff, but first I'll give you kind of 8-9 minutes of my take on productivity when you're doing multiple things as an entrepreneur. And I know that many of you, from knowing you, do a lot of entrepreneurial things and have a lot of skills. So the first thing that I wrote down thinking about this was focus. Like, I'll just give you my best practices of what I do, because I think that's actually the tangible thing that people miss about entrepreneurship is how focused you have to be. So before any call, I write down 3 things that I want from that other person. I know that sounds super old school, but I literally write it down on a paper so that I keep myself focused on that person during the call and don't get off into the weather too long. Another thing is that I take paper notes. David Noble, you make fun of me all the time, but you know why I do it. This is my last call that I had, 2 pages of pretty dense notes. And what I do, being in the entrepreneurial space, is before I leave my desk in the evening, I clear all my notes into digital, which means that I action the things that I had on there and I throw the paper away. So I don't retain paper. But keeping the notes actually keeps me ahead of the game in terms of, following up on stuff. I'm always the most proactive follow-up guy and the guy with the plan, which tends to be the entrepreneurial trait that gets you the farthest. And the third practice that I wrote down about focus is like email zero. Have you ever, well, I won't ask generically, hey, Haley, hey, Ryan, but email zero to me is I keep an empty inbox in all my inboxes. And I probably have 6 or 7 inboxes from the various organizations I'm working with. And the reason I keep them empty is because that's basically a pending. It's a task that you have to do. There's one action you have to take out of an email. Call this person. So usually if I get an email that is something that's trouble, like this is something negative, this is something that needs urgent attention, I pick up the phone, I don't email back. So I triage my mailbox and then delete them. I get rid of them because email archiving doesn't help you actually. It's about that in the moment activity as an entrepreneur. It actually makes you the guy who is like or lady who's the most, the most money making, so to speak, the one who can move the most product. The second thing that I wrote down, and Pat, you can talk about this way better than I can, but I try to stay very agile, which means that I wake up in the morning and I have in my mind what I want to do, and I don't write a list, but I do the hardest thing first, the thing that I most don't want to do, which is what you do in software engineering, actually. So what's the hardest thing that's going to block you? And I do that with my best energy the first half an hour. Just wait for your software engineer, like agile. Logan, I've talked about it in class before. Jameson, you've built software tools before. So it's like, take on the thing you don't want to do. The third thing is the physical aspect of being an entrepreneur is super hard. Like, it's not like you have a supportive office environment with a printer and a coffee machine and a support network of people around you can just kind of complain to. When you're in the entrepreneurial space, you are desperately alone all the time. And your lifeline is the people you turn into your team. And so I tend to drink a lot of water. Like, I take water breaks. I take stress breaks really frequently because I get stressed out when I'm working. I go outside and walk. I'm lucky to have a dog in the yard, but I'll get out and change my perspective and get fresh air quite often. And then I lift weights, and I don't do it to like be a macho tough guy, but because that's what actually releases my stress, is that physical action of lifting something heavier than I'm lifting with my computer. and I listen to music while I'm working. So as soon as I'm not on a call, I switch on some tunes, because that helps break my mental state down into the tasks I need to do and do it better. The third thing, and I'm almost done with my kind of little speech, and I want to get into conversation with you, but the spiritual side of being an entrepreneur. So the first thing, I've lived off this strategy for the last 10 years, basically, when I unhooked from the corporate world. Strength is the core for me, being physically strong and able to do my work. Because if I can't do anything, then I can't do my second priority, which is my family. So my core of my life is my wife and my kids. And I've been at home since 2015, actually. The end of 2015, I decided to never go to an office again. And I had been working that way in 14 and 15, but then I kind of figured it out and just never went again. And I will go to places, like I go to UConn to be in the class, like in Hartford or at stores, or I'll go to Connecticut Innovations now and meet people. But like people have figured out since 2015, 16, especially during COVID, you don't need to go to a place to be effective anymore. So I like being home because I can drive my daughter to school. I can see my son when he comes home, like really important spiritually. And the third piece of spirituality for me is just that, work from home environment. I think that's core to being an entrepreneur. So if you want to ask something, by the way, go ahead. Hey, Ollie. Hi, Katie. Nice to see you, even though your camera's off. I know who you are. Hi, Peter. So the fourth and kind of final thing that I wrote down as best practices is structure. And it's because I lived in Switzerland and I have a German wife, I think. But structure defines outcomes. It's something that I learned working with really good venture builders like Pre-Hype. And David, people at Pre-Hype, like Stacy and the gang. They taught me that. I was running innovation at UBS and we were chaotic. And Thomas Waddell and other people came in and they're like, structure. Like, you have to have a front, a middle, and a back to everything that you approach as an entrepreneur. Front being, am I generating leads? Am I attracting people? Am I creating an audience? Do I have a marketing program in place? Am I making posts? Is there enough inbound activity for me? Middle office is where you sell from. Does my offer make sense to the market? As an entrepreneur, whether you're selling software or a physical product, does it make sense? Will people actually pay for what you're trying to sell? Does the offering and the package and the way that you compile that for the world make sense? And then back office, super important. So I wanted to deep dive a little bit into tools. And Patrick, I'm actually really glad to see you here because you taught me a lot of this. So organizationally and creatively, you have to have these two sides of the house in your stack in what you're doing. And Alicia, you produce right on your phone, but I'm sure you have finance operations running. So organizationally, what I do is I use Google to kind of do email and calendar booking. We use Slack within Teams. Slack can be very distracting if you don't use it well. The rule that Patrick and I kind of had in place was unless there's 3 people in a conversation, don't use it. If it's one-on-one, use direct message or call. I bought a big screen, so you kind of see my big screen. The reason is because having that separate instead of your laptop, I also use a separate keyboard. A lot of entrepreneurs will end up doing this because you're so often and so intense that you need kind of a bigger frame to set. So it sounds cheesy, but it's actually really important. I use Teams because a lot of the enterprises that you work with, if you work with big corporations, use Teams. And so you have to get comfortable with how that works in that environment and have multiple logins. And then I actually use my phone alarm is probably my most often used thing to not miss meetings, because otherwise I'm in the flow of working on something and I'll miss meetings. And so what I learned over the years is to always set an alarm. So I'll look at my calendar when I wake up and I'm at my desk at usually 6:30, 6:45, and I literally will open alarm clock and set 6 alarms so that I don't miss things throughout the day. There's the other side, creative side of your computer, your virtual world. And really, this is my last best practice stuff, but I think the thing that I most create in is Sheets or Excel, because you can create a ton of stuff. You can prototype a product in Excel. I use draw.io, Patrick, which you taught me. I use that a lot to kind of frame out. Does anybody know what draw.io is? I can barely see you, but Swatha, you definitely do. Logan, you don't? Oliver? Here, Zach, I can't see you. Phoebe, you probably need it for your business. Draw.io is really cool. It's an easier way to draw concepts and flows. And usually flow charting a concept is really important for people. I use Loom a ton because, not Zoom, Loom with an L, because it's an easy way to wrap up a topic for someone and give them a 2-minute update, and people love it because you kind of show them what's going on and you give them a quick Loom after you've had a big group meeting, especially if there's a lot of tension in that meeting. I like to dissipate the tension with a quick Loom back to people. So these are entrepreneurial tools you can use. And then, yeah, that's about all the ones that I wanted to cover for now. So before I shut up and want to take your questions, because these go quick, these are half an hour. I guess my top 3 things, which are actually 4 things, are number 1, to be a productivity powerhouse, you have to be in the moment, present with the people that you're with. I notice a lot of folks are just constantly distracted. Like they're in a meeting, but they're not. Like, and you see this constantly in the entrepreneurial world, especially for the less experienced people trying to like launch a product or company. They're like so distracted. Like, take 10 minutes and make a really good meeting and focus on doing something, and then stop the meeting early and use your other time. Hi, Robin. So that's my number 1 thing, is be super in the moment on what you're doing and don't get distracted, and then go out and take a long walk and process what you were thinking about. The second thing is use your phone way more than you do today. So business happens on the phone. It happens in person. So when you call someone, you're basically saying, I love you. And so I call at least 5 or 6 or 7 people a day. And that's my way of saying, I love you. I want you in my life. Like, what can I do to help you right now? Are we aligned as a team? Are we coordinating? So when I'm working with someone, I'm calling them rather than emailing them. The third thing is helping people. So if you want to do a lot of business as an entrepreneur, seriously, sustainably, long-term, then just help people. Figure out a way to help them, whether it's building a product for them or software for them, or building a new value proposition, or if they need a website put up, or if they need slides done, or if they don't know how to use iMovie, just help somebody. And I guarantee you that will turn into business for you. I came back here 2 years, and David Noble can tell you all about it, without any idea what I was going to do. I was 25 years in another country, actually other countries. And I came back here not knowing anybody. And I kind of hit the ground just like trying to get to know people and networking with people, and then offering to help them, and legitimately just going and helping them. And that leads you to open doors where people are like, God, that guy could actually help us with this, right? So I think that's the core of being an entrepreneur, is always wanting to help other people, actually. And then my last words are, say thank you a shit ton. So I must thank, I don't know, I say thank you 50 times a day, because people actually feel good when you take a small moment and you thank them for whatever they're doing for you. I think it's really important to like genuinely mean it when you say it, and thank people. That's what I wrote down to prepare for this. I don't know if it was right or wrong, Michaela, but those are kind of my keys in a nutshell of entrepreneurship in 15 minutes, and trying to work as an entrepreneur. I'd love to get in a conversation and take your questions, actually.
That was great. Thank you, Dave. Your first question is actually from Haley. She said, how do you balance the days where you need to be OOO? When I'm out of office, which is a lot doing work-related stuff, it sets me back. I'll stay up until 2 a.m. doing emails once I get back home, but I'm looking for tips on managing this in a more sustainable way.
I don't have a good answer. You know why? Haley, literally, being an entrepreneur, what sucks about being an entrepreneur or running your own company is you never have an out of office day. You're always on 7 days a week. I was doing calls both days this weekend. That's a bad thing, but I try to balance it with so if I leave my desk, I don't take my phone with me, and I go spend an hour and play in my daughter's room on the floor. I do not have a phone with me. I ignore the rest of the world. And so I think you can like balance these times in your life, these time slots. But I think as a real entrepreneur, you're actually always on. Like, if other people have a better answer for that, but Alicia, it was Loom and draw.io. Type it in here. Patrick, you hooked me on it, man.
Thank you.
I'm a serial addicted user. Let's wait if I had it. Yeah.
Feel free to unmute and ask questions as well.
Yeah, totally. I know, Haley, that's true. But you got to chuck the phone away sometimes. Like literally, I will not take it. If I go out with my wife to dinner or something, I leave the phone at home. I don't care what else is happening. I'm going to that moment. And it's the only way to survive.
Swetha, go ahead.
So, Dave, my first question is, how much sleep do you get in a day?
Oh, I get plenty. I get 8 hours.
You do?
Yeah, I'm like all strung out when I'm working and I'm kind of like a spazzy person, but actually I really value sleep. So I tend to go to bed. I'm really boring. So I'll go to bed sometimes at 8 o'clock at night. And other times I'll go to bed at 10, but I never go much past 10 or 11. You know, old guy kids, but also just, I need the sleep. I need to recoup. And I usually wake up if I'm in an intense work phase. When you're doing entrepreneurial things, you're super out of your comfort zone all the time. Like I'm never in my comfort zone. If I am, something's wrong. If you're not slightly out of control, you're not racing. So I wake up thinking about sometimes at 4 a.m. the things that I want to do. And then I write them down. Like I've literally walked down in my underwear embarrassingly to my office and written down things at 4 in the morning, and then I go back to sleep. But that happens. If you talk to artists or creative people or entrepreneurs, that often happens. So it's best to like keep paper next to your bed.
Thanks, David. So the other question that I had is, I also take a lot of notes for meetings, like handwritten notes, and I find that helpful, but I struggle to do this, converting this to digital every day, and then I just lose track of it. Could you give me helps on what tools you use? How do you organize your notes?
Yeah, I'm not always off the crack of paper, honestly, because sometimes I can't process it all through. And then I will go back on Saturday or Sunday morning and clear it. So I'll be like, what was this about actually? Like, what company is this? I can't even remember. And I have chicken scratch. So, but you will get a lot by always going back and processing it once more and being like, there's 3 things on this page. Oh, and what I do is, so on the page, I actually make these little A's with circles on them for action.
Okay.
And I make these little hook signs for hooks. That was where the actual, I think the sales opportunity was where the hook is. So I make little symbols so that my eyes can naturally go to the page and quickly clear items so that I can bin that paper as fast as possible. So I don't keep a notebook. I actually use, like an engineer does, I use a pencil and pieces of paper.
Okay. Do you use Notepad++ or Google?
You know what, I used to, and what happened is when I go digital with to-do lists, I super get lost in life.
Okay.
Because all of a sudden it's like a magnum opus and it's 7 pages long and I don't know what to do. And so I like to try to stay very present and focused on, I need to call Derek. I need to call Ashley. I need to call David. I need to call Peter. And like literally I'll quickly jot down that.
Okay.
And then I'll make 5 phone calls and then I'll be like, I need to produce this thing, and I'll take an hour and I'll close my direct messengers in Slack and I'll produce a content piece. And then I'll go back to talking with people. But I'll tend to like shut out direct messengers and notes and all digital things if I want to create something. It's like coding, you know, like you need to go focus on that.
Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
Dave, Katie asked, with so many moving parts and projects you were involved with, how do you ensure you don't forget anything? Any tools you use for this?
Oh, geez. How do you don't forget anything? Is that the question?
Yes.
I guess sometimes I do, Katie. I hope that I never forget anything important is the thing. What happens is, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but you get shit thrown at you all day. And there's always a selection of 40 things that you could do next. And the really important part before you go to bed is doing the 3 things that you really need to do. Agile. Like I need to have made those, and it's usually things that aren't on your list is the problem. If you use a digital notepad, like call your mom. Like, is that on your digital notepad? But the most important thing for me right now might be call my mom. So I like to keep it all in RAM, meaning super fresh and right here in my kind of like, yeah, I need to do that. So if I get up and walk away, I remember like call mom before 5. And then in that way, I kind of triage and don't get back to everyone else's priorities, because people will load you up with priorities, especially as an entrepreneur. Like, can you quantify this? And do you think you could do that? And could we get a presentation about that? And have you called that guy? Like venture capitals will do this to you all the time. Like all of a sudden you got 10 other things to do. And then that just piles up and you never build your business because you're doing everyone else's laundry. So it's really important to know these 3 or 4 things, and everything else, maybe I just won't do it. Like literally. Wrong answer, Katie, but that's my real answer.
The next question is, do you think that transcribing notes from audio recording can be as effective?
That's a good question. Here, I don't know you, but I would like to. I think it can, because, I mean, I don't know if you use Teams, so Teams has that as a feature. Google doesn't, I think, yet, but someone else who's more technology, Jameson, you can tell me, but sometimes I will use the transcribed notes when I'm making a video, sometimes if it doesn't have subtitles, because, so Patrick, what we used to do is like upload them to YouTube and download them again with the subtitles, right? So I use veed.io, I'll type it in a second, to go get free titling off of a video. So I have the transcript so that I can reflect on it and write up the notes from it. But the audio recording stuff can be good. It's getting better. It's actually starting to put focus notes and stuff, but I don't use it as much as I probably should yet.
Yeah, I mean, to expand on that, David, I use that function a lot because typically I can't write notes by hand as fast as the speed of a meeting. So yeah. I find that helpful, but I don't know if it has the same kind of benefit for like focus as handwritten notes.
It reminds me of called, so David Noble does these coffee chats, and we had one with a guy from Japan who has a major gaming company that sold, and he talked about these platforms that we're on now. You're actually living already in a digitally enabled meeting world, like with the AI components, and you're starting to see, so within the next couple of years, you'll see that the transcripting features of these meetings and how you produce digital content out of them stuff starts to enhance. They're already working on it. Like it's like a lot of startups working on that. So it'll get better over the next couple of years. Yeah, exactly, Jameson. David, nice.
Hey, David, I had a question. So, Aditya, I wanted to understand, we all have off days wherein we don't feel like doing much, but we'd all like to mitigate or minimize the number of days wherein we feel that way. I wanted to understand what your strategies were.
I'll give you so like I'm 49, okay? So like some days just aren't great days. I like physically or mentally or whatever. And I think this applies at any age and any gender and any ethnicity. Like you can have days where you feel like shit. What I notice is though, the important part is some days I'm like, ugh. Like you get up and you're like, I'm not feeling it. And by the end of the day, I'm like, thank God I lived that day. Like that was a really good one. I can't believe, where did that come from? And so it's the surprise factor of not getting into a hole. I have this thing where I kind of wake up and I'm like, all right, there's some stuff that's not going right, but I'm gonna make this the best day possible. I know it sounds like stupid, empty positivity, but it's not. Like I literally say that to myself in the morning. I'm like, I'm gonna make this the best day possible. Mom's in the hospital. My kid is over here. Like, I don't even know what's going on with that project. This guy is gone. Like and I'm just like, all right, focus, make the best day possible out of this. Whatever I can do, even if it's one thing. And that usually like, you start to get momentum through the day. I don't know if that helps, but.
Thank you, it does. Thank you.
This is a really interesting question. How did your 25 years of business outside the country benefit you today?
Oh dear, please everybody go do it if you haven't lived into other places. There's 199 other countries. Americans don't know that usually, and thousands of languages. the process of learning another language. I mean, Swetha, you said it to me last week. You're like, yeah, you learned your third language faster than your second because that's normal, that's human, that's monkey. Like we all do. Like, and I think people who grow up here, they don't realize that in a lot of the countries, they're smaller and they're closer to other countries. And so you have a lot more kind of diversity just around your borders. And so there isn't walls being built. There's actually like, you know, I know there's a war going on right now. It's unfortunate, it's horrible. But in Europe, generally, like it's a pretty free place and there's a lot of movement of people. And so being abroad really opened my eyes. Also the chance to work with entrepreneurs from all over the world. So I was running F10, which is an accelerator. So you startups like CCEI, right? And we would get applications from the heart of Africa or in deep Asia, like not Singapore, like backwoods Cambodia, like barely English but gorgeous application. How did they create that? That's where Flappy Birds came from, was Vietnam, right? So you're like, wow, you have to look at stuff from all over the world. And in doing that, you kind of see these edges and these places where stuff is moving that you didn't know about. So I think being abroad is something I would highly recommend to everyone for as long as you can. Like, you know, we're back here with a purpose, but I look forward to living elsewhere again. You know, it's the way that we talk about that. Oh.
Next question. Any foods or drinks that help with focus?
Water everywhere. And not a drop to drink. People don't drink enough water. Seriously. Like less sports drinks and sugary things and just a lot of water. I'm working on this thing right now, which is an obesity application, and 70% of Americans are obese to some level. Depends, there's a big scale, right? But I talked about this in the Build Hartford class this week, and I think it's down to people being sold a lot of products here. Like drink clean, fresh water. Like that's the most powerful thing that you can do for yourself. Jameson, you know, you're a sports dude. He's like the most fit guy. If you guys could all see Jameson, he's like the most beautiful guy who would ever walk in the room. He's like big and fit and healthy. You know that.
Does anyone have any last minute questions for Dave before we wrap up?
I mean, I would be curious. I am very impressed by the term email zero, which seems so impossible. But it sounds like you also you balance email zero with the discipline of knowing when not to get involved and when to decisively ignore. So are you actually responding to everyone, or are you just sort of decisively deleting or just telling them like, no, I'm not doing that, but just letting them know you're not doing it? And related to that, just wondering how do you utilize the tactic of saying no and delegating when, I mean, I would just imagine, as you mentioned, things are always flooding in.
This is really important, not only as an entrepreneur, but anywhere you work, in corporation especially. So once you get into a more senior position, I was running operational teams in the back office of a bank, for example. You'll get 200, 300, 400 emails in a day. So the first thing is you set a rule, anything that I'm CC'd in goes to the trash. That literally is something we do. Because otherwise you get into everybody's little fight. Everybody's trying to copy you to cover themselves. I copied you on an email on whatever. It's much easier when you just say, yeah, we don't read that, right? But I never had what's called a personal assistant or something, because you don't really need it. You can stay in control of your own life, and then you're much more in touch with your own people. But you have to be able to triage and disciplined go through stuff and be like, not important, not important. This is really important. Like number one rule in the corporate world, anything your boss writes you, call him or her. Don't email back. Always look at what your boss is writing. I know that sounds stupid, but that's really important because in the entrepreneurial world, it's your client. So anytime a client writes me, I'm back on it responsibly immediately. If it's a coworker about something else that isn't on fire, like nobody's going to die today, I'll get back to him during the course of the day, in that one phone call or in a quick one-liner email. But email can be the death of you. It can be the death of your business, more importantly, or your career. So try to avoid it.
Phoebe asked, when I'm really into a project, I get into deep focus and don't want to pull away until I realize how much time went by. How do you discipline yourself to keep from overworking?
Ooh, tough question. I think the walking breaks help. Honestly, Phoebe, I know I already said it, but you can go deep focus. Patrick used to call it coding coma. Like, you can literally harm yourself by working too much. So I tend to look out. So I have a tree outside and birds land on that tree, and I like to look at the birds. I know that sounds weird, but they remind me of life. And so find that thing that reminds you that there's this other world besides your screen, and then get the hell away from your screen when you can. I think it's good though to do a 1 or 2 hour focus session every day. Go create something and make something and go into that moment and like turn everything else off and do that, because then you're going to feel better about your work after. But after that moment, like, go grab water and do something else for a little bit that isn't that. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dave. That was a very productive 30 minutes. I'm just going to quickly make some announcements. So upcoming, our next timely topics is on March 23rd. We'll be talking about why you should invest in the next generation of entrepreneurs. We'll have a panel this time, actually. And then we also have an application deadline coming up, and we have our program specialist, Alicia, on the call, who's going to say a few words about the summer fellowship program.
Hey, I just want to say thank you all for turning up and asking such good questions. For those of you I don't know, you can definitely write me. Is my email somewhere? Like, I always like to help people. I'll put a Yukon one here, okay? It's kind of a Yukon thing.
That's awesome. Thank you so
I
much.
promise not to ignore it or delete it.
Just make sure you don't CC you.
Right.
Hi, everybody. Just really quickly, my name is Alicia Krosniak. I'm a program specialist and marketing coordinator for CCEI. I apologize for my voice, but I just wanted to reiterate what Michaela said. Our flagship program, CCEI Summer Fellowship, which is UConn's Startup Accelerator. Our application deadline has been extended to this Monday. We choose the top 10 startups across the university, and you work with us 3 days a week over an 8-week period, where you get $15,000 in non-diluted funding, pro bono legal, marketing, and accounting services, and one-on-one coaching and mentorship from industry experts, our coaches, and entrepreneurs. It's open to anyone affiliated with UConn, so students, like undergraduate and graduate, faculty, staff, alumni. It's a really great cohort environment, and we teach you how to pitch. We go over your revenue streams and everything in between, to really get you ready to either launch your business, launch a new line or product within your business, or kind of just help you out on the next steps there, to get you funding or to progress into other accelerators. You can apply via the QR code on our screen there, and I will also just throw the link in the chat, and I'll also put my email in the chat, but you can reach out to me if you have any questions, and we hope to see some of you fellow entrepreneurs apply.
Thanks, Alicia. And thank you again, Dave. It was great listening, and thank you for all the great questions that everyone had. So have a great night, everyone.
Stay safe, go sledding.
Thank you.
You guys.